The rules of the old game unraveling. From late Ming dynasty in the 16th century through most of the Qing dynasty, which ended in 1911, China was powerful and growing. But China was less innovative than the West. The Qing was China's final imperial dynasty. The Qing was not ethnic Han Chinese. They were traditionally nomadic Manchurians. They came from the northeastern plains, bordering on Korea, Siberia, and Mongolia, as well as on China. By the time they took over China in 1644, they were heavily influenced by the Chinese, but their outlook was Central Asian. They oversaw the doubling of the area of China, bringing Manchuria, Xinjiang, Tibet, Mongolia, and Taiwan into China. These were previously tributary states of China, but now they were under the direct, firm rule of Beijing. The Qing emperor did not focus on the newly rising powers of Europe, who came to China by sea looking for trade and for souls to convert to Christianity. When the Qing emperors found that the traders and missionaries were troublesome, they simply sealed off China from the West. The policy worked in the short term, but the long term was counterproductive. By the 19th century, Imperial Qing China was in decline, owing to dynastic decay, military defeat, and popular loss of faith in the old game of Imperial Chinese society. Imperial Chinese historians had traditionally told the story of centuries-long cycles of rise and fall of dynasties, an ebb and flow stretching back into the dim past before recorded times. A new dynasty with the mandate of heaven brought peace and good governance to the people. Yet time and again, the ruling dynasty rose to a peak only to succumb to corruption, decay, and decline. Losing the mandate of heaven, the old dynasty would be replaced by a new one. The Mandarins, the gentlemen, scholar, bureaucrat, literati who ran the country, were expected to oppose an emperor who failed to exhibit propriety and benevolence, and who thereby demonstrated that he had lost the mandate of heaven. The histories of dynastic cycles were parables, quasi-myths, instructing each generation in governance to maintain the mandate of heaven. Early 19th century Qing China saw standards of living declining. The peasants were restive. Corruption was rife. China was mired in an opium epidemic, and foreigners entered with increasing impunity. The Qing was losing the mandate of heaven. Gunboat diplomacy was the political innovation of the imperialists, powered by steam and cruising on shallow draft, heavily armed boats. These Western innovations in propulsion, marine engineering, and munitions were powerful. The gunboats delivered massive firepower and well-armed and disciplined soldiers to surgically attack the outmoded Chinese. The gunboats inflicted unacceptable pain, and the diplomats followed up with negotiated settlements. The imperialists had no interest in occupying large areas of China. Their victories gave them access, trading rights, foreign concessions, and cash from the Chinese government. They left governing the vast area of China to the Qing dynasty. However, the real existential threat to the Qing dynasty in the 19th century was domestic, not foreign. Modern history's largest peasant revolution happened to 19th century China. It was led by Xiuquan, a native of Guangdong, a scholar who had taken the imperial examinations 4 times, and who had failed the imperial examinations 4 times. He was a schoolteacher and the prophet of his own new religion. His innovation, his religion, depicted him as the second son of God, the brother of Jesus Christ, charged with a mission to establish the kingdom of heavenly peace. Before the Qing had defeated him in 1864, he had, over the previous 2 decades, converted millions and incited revolution in every province of the country. His armies had occupied more than 600 walled cities, and his kingdom had ruled South China from his capital, Nanjing. The late Qing dynasty attempted to reform. The government sponsored a 2 decades-long self-strengthening movement focused on technological and military modernization. A massive translation effort brought large-scale modern industrial engineering and scientific texts into the Chinese language for the first time, and the Qing government sent graduate students overseas to study at famous European and North American universities. In strategic industries, the Qing government set up enterprises, including the China Merchants Steam Navigation Company, a state-owned enterprise that has continued down to the present day. But by the end of the 19th century, accelerating dynastic decay, more domestic rebellion, and increased foreign penetration won out over the Qing dynasty's reforms. When the armies of the 8 Nations Alliance, Austria-Hungary, Britain, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Russia, and the United States occupied Beijing in 1900, they showed that the Qing dynasty was bankrupt, financially, militarily, morally, and intellectually. 11 years later, the Republican Xinhai Revolution of 1911 extinguished imperial China. The old game was over, but there was no viable replacement. China was subject to 4 more decades of invasion, war, revolution, and humiliation before the country achieved peace and unification under the Communist Party of China.